Hi everyone and welcome to this video. So last time we discussed a little bit about new commands of BASIC, in particular commands involving the concept of arrays. And the commands that we have seen are dim, option based, data and read. So this time we are going to go through a different topic, which is of course still related to BASIC, and we are going to discuss built-in functions. What do we mean by built-in functions? It's actually pretty easy. You have to think of a function as something that transforms an input into a different output. So the function, for example, could be the square root of a number. You give the number 4 and you obtain that the square root of the number 4 is 2, and so on and so on. And built-in functions, we mean functions that are already available in BASIC, so you don't need to actually build them. They are already there. I have divided these built-in functions in two sets, in two ensembles. The first one is the set of mathematical functions, and the second one is the set of functions that operate on strings. So we are going to go through them, but this is a slightly different video in the sense that rather than going through every single built-in function and trying to explain them, I'm just going to mention them, and then what you should do, especially if you are a beginner, is to go on this website and to dig into the details of these functions. These functions are very simple and easy to understand, so that's why I have decided to go for a shorter video this time. And as always, I thank you for subscribing to this channel, but also for spreading the word about these videos. I am very grateful. Thank you very much for encouraging me by doing this. Let's start from the mathematical functions. So first of all, before we go through that list, we have to understand how to use a mathematical function. So let's say that, for example, you want to see or you want to print on the screen what's the value of the square root of 4. The way you would do this is by using the function sqr, which actually provide the square root of a number, and then you provide as input to the function the number which you want to find the square root. In similar way, you could use also a variable for the input, so you could have said x equals 4, and then you could have asked for, print sqr of x. Or even you could have done something different where you assign the value, or let's say the result of the application of the function sqr to a variable, and then eventually you print the value of the variable. So in a way now you understand how all these functions can be used. So if we now go through these concrete examples here, what do they are and how we can use them. So in the case of int here, this is for integers. So if you provide, let's say, a fractional number, let's say 4.2, but you are interested in having just the integer part of that fractional number, you practically use this function. So it's going to be int of 4.2, for example, and this is going to provide you the integer part, which is 4. SQR, we just saw it. This is the square root, so this is not difficult to understand. SGN is rather uncommon, but it is used, and SGN stands for sign. So if you give a value to the SGN function, let's say plus 1.5, sign is going to provide you plus 1, which means that the input number is actually a positive number. If you provide as an input, let's say minus 1.5, SGN is going to provide you a minus 1, which stands for the number is negative. You have to check the documentation though, because SGN can behave slightly differently depending on the interpreter that you have. So now we can go through the trigonometric functions, which are very important, for example, in engineering, but not only. It's also important, for example, in mathematics or in physics. So these are the usual trigonometric functions where the input provided to this function is an angle that is measured in radians. So if you if you use the sin function, essentially you are computing the sine. If you use the cos function, you are computing the cosine of that angle. And if you use tan, you are actually computing the tangent of that angle. In the similar way, exp and log compute the exponential of a number, and log is going to provide the logarithm of that number in base 10. RND and randomize are slightly different. RND is always going to provide you a number between 0 and 1, or at least for the vast majority of interpreters that implement BASIC, so you have to check the documentation for that. And randomize, it's a way to actually provide a seed to your random number generator. Many computers that we use today, but also in the past, actually provide a series of pseudo-random numbers, which means that actually it is a series of numbers that could be predicted. But to make things more interesting and to make this series as much random as it is possible, you can use the randomize command here, and you provide the seed for the random number generator. So again, here you have to check the manual of your interpreter or of your compiler in BASIC, because these numbers can be very, very different, so you have to check. And finally, I'm reporting here this other function here, which is timer, which is a very interesting one, because it allows you to check what time or how much execution time your program has been spending. A timer is practically going to provide you the number of seconds that have elapsed since the midnight, and in practice, by using this, you can compute what is the execution time. We can now introduce the functions that operate on strings. And the very first function that we are going to see is len. So what is this function? Essentially, this is going to provide the length of a string. So it means that if you have a string which consists in the word hi, hi, essentially the length is going to be equal to 2. So you understand this function very, very quickly. This is very easy to use. Now, if we go through ask and chr $, this is slightly different. As you might know, every character in a computer is encoded in ASCII. So it is encoded in a table of numbers which correspond to these characters. So for example, if you take capital A, this is equal to 65, and if you take capital B, this is equal to 66, and so on. So if you are interested to understand what is the number that corresponds to a character, you just have to use this ask function here. In the opposite direction, let's say that you have the number, the ASCII number, and you want to know what is the character that corresponds to that. So let's say that your number is 65. If you do CHR $ of 65, this is going to provide you capital A, because capital A corresponds to 65 in the ASCII table encoding of characters. In similar ways, we can use string $. So string $, has a different effect, of course. And what string $, is going to do is the following thing. Let's say that you have one or more character. Let's say that you have a string and you want to repeat this string a number of times. So you have only two options here. Either you repeat the string by hand, or you use the string $, function. In this particular case, with string $, you provide the string that you want to duplicate, and then you provide the number of times you want to duplicate that string. And all of this is going to be provided for you automatically. Then we can go through these other functions, LCASE dollar and UCASE dollar, and you might suspect that this is for lowercase and uppercase, which in this case you are correct. LCASE is going to provide, so if you provide, let's say, a string to LCASE, it's going to convert or transform this string in lowercase string, and if you provide another string to UCASE dollar, it's going to convert this string in uppercase string. Then we can go through str dollar and val. These are very simple to understand. So say that you have a number, let's say that you have a string, let's say that you have a variable that contains a number, and you want to transform, you want to convert that variable into a string. So the way you do this is by using this function here, str dollar, which is going to transform any numerical value or any variable that contains a numerical value into a string. If you use val, this is exactly the opposite. So if you provide, let's say, a string to val, and that string contains, let's say, a number, val is going to provide the string but converted into a number. So this is a very nice way to convert strings which contain numerical values into actual numerical values. So let's say a variable with a numerical value. We can now discuss a little bit about left dollar, right dollar, and mid dollar, but I'm just going to give you the tenets. So in practice, let's say that you want to extract a substring from an original big string. You have three different functions to do this, which are left dollar, right dollar, and mid dollar. And essentially, these three functions are different from each other because of the location of the substring that you specify. So for left dollar, this is going to be a location that is that correspond to the left hand side of the string. For right dollar, you are going to provide a location that correspond to the right hand side of the string. And for mid dollar, this is the most general function in this set here because it provides you a way to extract a substring from anywhere from the original string. Then I'm reporting here date dollar and time dollar because these are very important, let's say, functions. For example, you want to report in your code what is the date, so you use date dollar, and if you want to report what is the current time, you use time dollar. And finally, I want to introduce the INKEY dollar, which is a function, but this is a very peculiar function. So INKEY dollar essentially you do not provide an input to this function, but essentially what this function provides to you is what is the key that is being pushed on the keyboard. So if no key is being pushed on the keyboard, INKEY dollar is practically going to give you just an empty string, and if a key or a button is being pushed on the keyboard, then INKEY dollar is equal to exactly the button or the character that you are pushing on the screen, on the keyboard. So this concludes the video for today. I highly recommend you to go through the link that I have suggested at the beginning of this video to understand the details of these functions, but you will see it's very simple to understand these functions if you use that link. As always, I thank you very much for your attention today and see you in the next video.